this conference is going to rank as the most important in the beginning of the 21st century. The Cheetah generation is the new breed of Africans who brook no nonsense about corruption. They understand what accountability and democracy is. They're not going to wait for government to do things for them. In contrast, of course, we have the hippo generation. They are stuck in their intellectual patch, complaining about colonialism and imperialism. You ask them to reform the economies, they're not going to reform it because they benefit from the rotten status quo. There are a lot of Africans who are very angry at the condition of Africa. We're talking about a continent which is not poor, it is rich in mineral resources, natural mineral resources. But the mineral wealth of Africa is not being utilized to lift its people out of poverty. There are so many people, so many governments, so many organizations who want to help it. People in Africa, they don't understand. But helping Africa has been turned into a theater of the absurd. It's like the blind leading the clueless. Did you know that 40% of the wealth created in Africa is not invested here in Africa? It's taken out of Africa. That's what the World Bank says. Look at Africa's begging bowl. It leaks. What are the leakages? Corruption alone costs Africa $148 billion a year. Capital flight out of Africa, $80 billion a year. Every year, Africa spends $20 billion to import food. Just add that up. All these leakages. That's far more than the $50 billion Tony Blair wants to raise for Africa. Now, back in the 1960s, Africa not only fed itself, it also exported food. We know that something has gone fundamentally wrong. You know it, I know it. Let's move on and flip over to the next chapter. And that's what this conference is all about. The next chapter. The next chapter begins with, first of all, asking ourselves this fundamental question. Whom do we want to help in Africa? There's the people, and then there's the government or leaders. Now, the speaker before me, the previous speaker before me, Idris Mohammed, indicated that we've had abysmal leadership in Africa. That characterization, in my view, is even more charitable. I belong to an internet discussion forum, an African internet discussion forum, and I asked them, I said, since 1960, we've had exactly 204 African heads of state. And I asked them to name me just 20 good leaders. Everybody mentioned Nelson Mandela, Kwame Nkrumah, Nyerere, Kenyatta. They couldn't go beyond 15. The vast majority of the African leaders failed their people. The slate of the post-colonial leaders, an assortment of military, fufu heads, Swiss bank socialists, crocodile liberators, vampire elites, quack revolutionaries, that there is something called a government in Africa that cares about its people, serves the interests of the people, and represents the people. There is one particular quote. A Lesotho chief once says that here in Lesotho we got two problems: rats and the government. What you and I understand as a government doesn't exist in many African countries. What we call our governments are vampire states. They suck the economic vitality. Government is the problem in Africa. It's a government which has been hijacked by a phalanx of bandits and crooks who use the instruments of state power to enrich themselves, their cronies and tribesmen, and exclude everybody else. The richest people in Africa are heads of state and ministers. And quite often the chief bandit is the head of state himself. Where do they get their money? By creating wealth? No, by raking it off the backs of their suffering people.